Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond, and we look for solutions as well. I'm going to introduce my guest to you today, and I didn't test your last name. Heather Nemelka, did I get it right? Okay,
right.
Good. This is Heather Nemelka. Thank you for being here. Heather is the founder and president of Elavare Foundation, a nonprofit that helps women return to the workforce through training, mentorship, and community support. She's also the founder and CEO of Eleva LLC, which funds the foundation's mission through workshops, consulting, and partnerships that help companies and employees thrive. Through the foundation, Heather helps women rebuild confidence and skills as they return to work. Through Elavare LLC, she works with individuals and organizations to accelerate career growth, strengthen leadership, and transform workplace culture so everyone can reach their potential. With more than 20 years of leadership and marketing experience, Heather also serves as the chair of the Silicon Slopes AI chapter and sits on the boards of Bear River Mutual and Mom Tribe. She holds a BA in communications and an MBA from Brigham Young University, and above all, loves being a mom to her 5 kids. 5 kids. How old? Or how's the oldest? How's the youngest?
Oh my gosh, the oldest is 29 and the youngest is 20.
Okay.
So I'm an empty nester.
We're in similar situations for sure. Yeah.
You know what it's
6
like.
with me, but they're 31 to 21. So
okay.
Yeah.
Wow, you squoze a lot more in there. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
we did. That's true. So tell me a little bit about just your interest or curiosity in mental health. Does it come from like personal experiences or just what you've seen? We had some conversations before about some work you're doing with some college students about this. So yeah, just tell me about that.
Well, on my former husband's side of the family, both his mother and his father had mental health challenges in their families, and his father took his life, and his sister had tried multiple times. And so I have had, almost 25 years of experience with that. Yeah. And also just, I think nowadays everybody has some mental health challenges. Yes. I don't think anybody is immune from it. And so regardless of whether you have a diagnosed mental illness or it's just anxiety and stress you're dealing with, I think it's something that I paid a lot of attention to.
Sure. And I think you're right. Everyone's lives are being touched by it, either in the first person because they're having it themselves or in a direct relation to them. But it is something that's just, it's life. It's normal. It goes up and down. I remember my youngest, when she went to college, I said, you're going to have a really bad day at college one of these days where you just feel terrible and everything falls apart. And when that happens, and you're going to feel it in your mental health. You're going to have anxiety and depression, all these things. And when that happens, I don't want you to think what you're doing wrong. I want you to think, I wonder why it took so long, right? Just because it's going to happen, expect it. And I'm not trying to be a pessimist with that. It's very realistic because it'd be like saying, well, I'm just going to live my life in such a way that I'm never going to get physically sick.
Right.
That I'm never going to have a cold. I'm never going to get the flu. I'm going to do all the things, and it's never going to work. And so with our physical health, we expect it to go up and down. We expect sometimes we don't feel as well, and we're okay with that. We're like, oh, this kind of stinks, but we don't feel guilty. We don't feel like I wasn't doing enough. But for mental health, whatever reason we feel like that, we're like, well, if I had just done more, then I wouldn't be anxious right now. And I don't know that it works that way. So.
Well, and it used to be that we never talked about mental health challenges, right? You could talk about having physical ailments and everybody accepted that as normal, but you kept anything that wasn't a physical, run-of-the-mill challenge. You never talked about those because it was a sign of weakness. And I really am glad that we talk a lot more about it. It's not perfect, but we're getting better. And I think that opens up channels of communication that normally wouldn't be there, and you feel like you're not alone. And I think for the longest time, because people were suffering in silence, you felt like you were the only one dealing with these challenges. And then you think, well, why can't I get my act together? Why is it that I can't seem to deal with some of these stressors or activities in my life that are really causing me to feel depressed? Yeah. And I think now that we talk about it more often, you realize, okay, I'm not alone. Other people also have these challenges. So
yeah, I was talking with a friend not long ago, and he was saying how when people come together and only present their best selves, then usually they end up walking away feeling worse because they can see them own selves in full relief, and they can see all their flaws and stuff, and they say, oh geez, she's doing amazing, and I'm doing terribly. But when people come in authenticity and kind of show their warts, so to speak, they end up feeling so much better, because then they say, oh, well, she's struggling too. And they connect on levels that they wouldn't otherwise connect at. So I agree. I think the increased discussion about mental health is certainly helpful. And I think what's going to help the most is just people being real and just saying, look, this is just who I am. And sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. And that's the way it is, regardless of level of success, regardless of, anything else in life.
Well, and what I found too is that you connect with people over challenges.
Yes.
You bond when you are authentic and you share what you're going through. And I discovered something when I started to post more on LinkedIn. I had avoided Instagram and Facebook because I worried that would affect my mental health, and I didn't want to compare myself. And as a divorced woman, sometimes it's really easy to compare yourself to others, and you think, well, they have the perfect family, they're taking all the great family trips. I have a broken family.
Well, in Utah County especially, right?
Oh,
I mean,
100%,
it's more difficult here than a lot of places. Yeah.
And on LinkedIn, I started to post some more of my business challenges that I was having and career challenges, and I would get these direct messages from people saying, thank you so much for sharing. I've been going through something similar. I've felt very alone. And all of a sudden it clicked, and I realized, wow, that is the level of connectivity that I have wanted and didn't know that I could find so easily just by sharing more of what the reality is of my life.
Yes.
And I think in an age where we're becoming more and more digital, I think the human connection is going to become more and more important.
I agree. As connected as we've ever been in the technical sense, but I think that our loneliness has increased considerably as well. And so I think that authentic kind of real connection is important, and we have to figure out a way. As human beings, we go from the extreme. We
do. It's
true. It's horrible, And so now we're like, oh, social media, woohoo, let's go do that, and it's the greatest thing ever. And now all my friends are virtual. Instead of like, no, you can have some virtual friends, and that's great, but we need to get back to the some of the real stuff as well. Have a combination. AI is fascinating that way, and some of the most recent announcements with how basically it's designed to be a closed loop. I mean, to get you involved and to kind of suck you into that, and people are having relationships with AI that are not real. Yeah. And I think we'll see fallout from that in the coming day, I think. I don't know.
And it's interesting with ChatGPT, because that's my LLM of choice.
Yes.
But it's interesting because it always wants to encourage me. It's always telling me encouraging things. And so I'll write something and it'll say, oh, that's so smart, Heather. I think you're really thinking of something really insightful. Da, da, da. So if you always have someone praising you, telling you how great you are, it's kind of nice to have somebody tell you, that you're doing great things, especially if you've had a hard day at work.
Sure.
Or your spouse is telling you that you need to do more. And I can see how it can be a big trap, but we have to remain human and
Yes.
distance ourselves to recognize that it's fake. It's the algorithms that are out there know what you crave, what you
Right.
want, and they'll just continue to feed you more of it. And it's such a slippery slope.
Which is the opposite of a real human relationship, because it's a minefield half the time, right? Because you don't know what you're going to get. You seek things, right? If you want a certain something from the person you're in a relationship with, we don't know how to get it. We don't know how to ask for it half the time. Even if you ask for it completely appropriately, you still may not get it, right?
Oh, yeah.
The other person might be like, I don't feel comfortable saying that, or I don't want to do that
Right.
thing, or something like that. But I think that's so important, and I think that's what builds resilience in people. There was, it made me think of, it was Biosphere. You may remember that. Since I know how old your kids are. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We remember Biosphere. So there's this big contained environment, right? Where they're trying to create this kind of utopian, almost biological situation. What they found, and they planted trees in it, like full-grown trees.
I love this.
You know the story,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And the trees were completely weak. They would just fall down. You like lean into them and they'd fall over.
Yeah.
Even though it had these amazing root systems like others do. And what they found was that because there's no wind.
Yeah.
There was no wind in there, and it was the wind that was creating the adversity, basically, and then they had to push back against that, which then made, they created, better ways to stand up. And so, yeah, I think we need the wind. We need that. And I don't think artificial intelligence is going to give us the wind. It's not designed to push us out,
No, but I will say I have had conversations that I knew were going to be difficult with one of my kids. And I have, gone to ChatGPT and I've said, this is the situation,
Sure.
Given the context, I know she's going to be upset with me. How do I phrase this in a way that we can have a really good dialogue between us? And, I'll put in there, these are my fears. This is how she often will
Sure.
react. This is how I often react. Help me have a better conversation. What are some things I should be aware of? And so it actually has helped have better conversations.
Oh,
sometimes.
absolutely.
And so it's just finding that balance
Yeah.
between what can be helpful and yet you still have to own your side of that
Yeah.
dialogue, right? You have to still think, okay, does this sound like me? Is this me? But it's helped in some of those circumstances.
Sure.
For sure.
Oh, absolutely. And when it comes to it being kind of a resource for information, I think that's amazing. It's really no different than if you had a book on relationships that you might go to
Exactly. Yeah.
and read, that some smart woman had written about, in her years of research on relationships. And these LLMs, what they do is they just steal basically all
Yeah,
of that.
I know. It's unfortunate.
Sorry, for all of us copyright holders out there,
No.
and I think there'll be a reckoning for that someday as well. But anyway, it does a very good job of assimilating all of that knowledge and getting that to you. I think the problem is going to be when we're using it as surrogate relationships.
Right.
I think that's going to be the challenge. I think your application, I think that's a great use of it. What can I do? What can I say to my daughter and how can I react? Because then you actually went to your daughter and had a human mom-daughter reaction,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That may have went the way you thought it did, and maybe it didn't. And some of those things were helpful. Maybe they weren't, because you never know how she's going to react in that. You're like, excuse me for just a minute. I have to go ask another question,
Really?
right?
I didn't anticipate this.
Can we, exactly. Can we stop this conversation right here? Well, I want to talk about the work that you do, and a major focus is helping women become confident in the workplace. So tell me about that. Like, how did that start? I think it's amazing. I think if women realized how competent they actually are just from the beginning, we'd have no problem with confidence in the workplace. But for whatever reason, I think it is a bigger struggle for them than men at times.
100%. When I had to go back to the workforce, I had an 18-year career gap. So I thought to myself, well, no one's going to want to hire me.
Mm-hmm.
And I originally had applied to 88 jobs, all of which were jobs I had done before I became a mom. So I had a career for 6 years. And then I also had an eBay business while I was a full-time mom. But I thought, I can get one of these jobs easily. And when I didn't hear anything from any of them, no response, no thank you, but no thanks. There was silence. I started to realize, oh my gosh, I guess nobody's going to want to hire me. And that wasn't the truth, but that's how I
Right.
looked at it. And I was able to get back in the workforce through an informational interview that I did with my brother's connections. He set that up, and the rest is history. But I remember very clearly how that felt, that lack of confidence of, I haven't been doing these things in a business context.
Sure.
I don't know some of these technical programs. Why would somebody want to hire me? And one of the challenges that a lot of women have is this thought of, oh, well, I don't know how I have any skills to offer. And the reality is those mom skills totally transfer to work skills.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also discovered I worked with a team of BYU students through their on-campus internship program, and I had them interview over 100 mothers who were either in the workforce or were looking to return to the workforce. And the common thread through all of them was this lack of confidence. And I realized that if those who are in the workforce lack confidence, then this is just a general
It's not
challenge.
just a career gap issue, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that happens over time. We have people who tell us that we're not enough or you didn't do this right. And certainly as a mother, you could have your children telling you, you forgot my homework, you didn't do this, and it's hard. But I was talking to a well-known CEO locally, and she has been a CEO for many years. And I remember her saying one time that she lacked confidence. And I thought, wow, if somebody that I respect and admire who has all this experience in the workforce lacks confidence every now and then, I think this is just normal human
Sure.
nature. And I think actually that helps keep us humble. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's
Right.
just that we need to remind ourselves of who we are and what we're capable of.
Right. So I imagine that because I think you're right. I think a healthy dose of whatever it is, lack of self-confidence is a great thing, but it can become extreme too, right? It can get into kind of the
Totally.
place
Yeah.
where it's very unhelpful to us. And so I imagine part of what you do is trying to help people get out of that deficit space and get into a place where you say, look, you shouldn't think you're everything to everybody. That's not the place to be either. But just to say, yeah, I don't know everything about everything. There are some areas that I'm not very great at, but these are areas that I'm amazing at. And to be able to talk about it kind of realistically instead of these extremes again, either I'm horrible at everything or I'm amazing at everything. Neither of those are true for anybody.
Exactly. In fact, I took my boss to lunch a few years ago, and so he was the one who had hired me at this job when I went back to the workforce. And I asked him, why did you give me a chance? What was it about me that made you want to hire me? And he said two things. I could tell you were smart, which is funny because I didn't ever think I was smart. I was like, my brothers are really smart, but I'm not smart. And he also said, I could tell you were hardworking. And he said, I knew that if you didn't know how to do something, you would figure it out because you're a hard worker. And that's exactly what happened. I remember going into meetings with him and he would tell me all of these things and he'd use these marketing acronyms that I didn't know what they were. And I would write everything down in a notebook and go back to my cubicle and quickly Google everything he was telling me. And I learned on the job. And I think sometimes we sell ourselves short by assuming that everybody else knows more than we do.
Yeah.
Everybody has it all figured out. And the reality is that we're all figuring things out on different levels. We're on different paths. And we have to recognize that that's what makes life so beautiful, is that we have something to offer no matter what. And sometimes those challenges that we've had, or those the parts of us that we feel aren't adequate, actually allow us to bring more to the table because we're willing to learn. We're willing to make mistakes, and that's okay because we're all figuring it out.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that goes back to what you're talking about, this idea that raising children, you're developing skills all along that are totally transferable to the workplace, and how this person that hired you recognized that. He wasn't necessarily, he was like, I can teach her things, but I can't teach smart.
Right.
And I can't teach hardworking. I mean, maybe you can, but it's much, much more difficult.
Totally.
And you're not looking for that in a workplace. You're not looking for the 10-year progression program to go from someone who's lazy to become a hard worker. That's what parenting is, to try to help your kids become that, right? But yeah, those things that the person sees that employers are looking for, I think they are looking for those things that every parent that's worked hard at it can learn along the way. So I love that.
100%.
So do you help them, these women, do you help them kind of see that? See like you already have a lot of skills that you didn't realize you had, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I talk to them about mom skills, project management, multitasking, communication, budgeting, event planning, all of these skills that you have to do in like all the time. And you're dealing with unhappy customers, which are your children and sometimes your spouse, and sometimes teachers at parent-teacher conference. And I help them recognize that what they've been doing all along transfers to the workforce, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh, okay. But what they have to learn is how to articulate it, right? How to communicate their value to a potential employer. And that's also something that I teach them. And sometimes they're also wondering, like, what talents do I have? But beyond just the mom skills, what talents do I have? And so I have them do an exercise where they go back in their life and they write down every accomplishment, every challenge they've overcome. It doesn't have to be that they graduated, as a valedictorian or those kind of things. But, when you won a race, when you had a difficult conversation with a friend that you got through it, and take note of all of those, because oftentimes we forget the great things we've done and who we are. And that also helps them recognize that they can do more, and that helps build confidence. I remember listening to Alex Ramosi, who's an author, and he's really a big figure in the sales world. And he talks about how confidence requires evidence. And so an activity that I think is really important is for women or anybody to go through and find evidence of when they have done these hard things.
Right.
And it's not that we aren't capable and we're not accomplished. It's just we've forgotten it over time. And so I also tell women, especially those in the workforce, to keep track of a kudos file, which is every time somebody sends you an email and says, you did such a great job here, save it or write it in a journal and keep track of those things, because we hear it and we think, oh, that's so great. It makes us feel good, but then we forget about it.
Right. I do the same thing as I've taught people about anxiety management, and as I strive to manage my own anxiety. I do the same thing where I try to remember all the times that things have worked out, because the wheels come off, periodically, right? Something happens, totally unexpected. And I think to everyone that's happened just dozens of times in their lives. But in at least for me, in every case, we've got back on track. We've been able to get the thing going again. And oftentimes it's worked out even better because there's been learning from that, and sometimes new opportunities that have opened up because of that disruption. Disruption is amazing. We don't like the idea of it, but it really is an amazing thing in our lives to help us move forward. But so when the wheels come off again, I have to think, okay, wait a minute. Let me think about this time before and this time before, and all the times that's happened. And then it usually helps me calm down a little bit, because I'm like, okay, this is just another iteration of that. This is just chapter 12 in the book of wheels coming off. And this chapter is going to have a good resolution, just like the other one did. I just can't see it now,
right?
But it will happen. So I love that, looking for the evidences. And for the women that you're working with, and for anyone for that matter, we're not talking about future evidence. We're talking about things that you've already done that demonstrate your success and your competence and stuff, because all of us have that.
Yeah. And I'll even say to the people I work with, if you can't remember them, go back to your friends and family, former coworkers, former managers, and ask them.
Yes.
Because sometimes we forget, but they can oftentimes remember those, and that's fine to reach those out to those people that can also help you.
It's probably a huge confidence booster, because we're much more likely to say such great things about other people, right?
Oh, 100%. And I like what you were talking about, how sometimes those outcomes that we want to have the perfect outcome, and those don't always work out. But those detours are what really help shape and refine us into becoming better individuals. And I'm sure your compassion evolves and increases when you have hard challenges that you've gone through, but then you can be more empathetic to somebody else because you've done it. So as much as we want things to work out, we want to have all the confidence, we want our life to be what we imagined, when it doesn't work out is actually such a blessing and a great fortunate experience, because it helps us relate to other people better, and over time helps us be stronger.
Yeah. And I think that's the paradox in it, because like you said, those amazing things that we want, I don't know that they come by any other way, but by the difficulty, right? I mean, I don't know that I've met anyone that has just walked this charmed life and has achieved all the things and cannot reflect back on any sort of challenge or disruption or difficulty they may have faced that might have, created some of those opportunities for growth. I just don't think it happens. I think it's always a result of something breaking, that great things come from that. And so again, it's kind of back to what we talked about at the beginning. It's like, expect that. It's okay for that to happen. Even with things like innovation and stuff, it's great. Like artificial intelligence, it's amazing, and it's going to provide some awesome opportunities. But we're also going to see where it doesn't work, and where it is doing very negative things to society as well. And that's great. We need to see those things. We need to see where it breaks. We need to see where it is really not working. So then we can say, okay, well, let's either fix it or put some constraints or whatever it is, so we can move forward, take the good of it. So yeah, I think that's great. It's hard to teach though, because everyone just wants that. Everyone thinks that their life is just going to go forward. And if they, I know.
Well, in fact, the CEO that I mentioned earlier, she has a great quote that she's shared. I don't know if it's attributed to her or to someone else, but she would always say there's no growth in comfort and no comfort in growth.
Right.
And it's true. We would never, my brother, his wife has had multiple brain tumors, and he has said over the years of these brain tumors, I would never have chosen to go through this. I would never have wanted to have these challenges and see my wife suffer, but I've grown in ways that I would never have grown otherwise. And so he says,
and surely she has as well.
Yeah. And as someone on the outside looking in, I realize too that whenever I think that I have hard times, I realize somebody else always seems to have it harder. And I'm always very much inspired by those people that have gone through those hard things and come out on the other side a better person. And that's what I want to be.
And I think that's who you are. I mean, you're even just the description of what you've gone through in your life and the challenges that you've faced. I mean, it's amazing what a great example you are to other people. And so if you need confidence later about the podcast, you come ask me, okay? And you say, because I want to say, oh my gosh, I've interviewed Heather and she did such a great job, and all you're thinking about is, but I didn't say this. And I know.
Yeah,
it's
exactly. So true. So true.
So if you need some confidence, ask me how you did, because I'll give you a glowing review. So thanks for being on the show today, Heather. Thanks for sharing.
Great to be with you.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for listening today. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.